Games in the late 80s were a changing landscape. Arcades were booming with new and innovative releases such as Bionic Commando, Ghosts and Goblins, and Battle Circuit, and the home console market started to make waves with some currently known gaming history staples such as Mario, Contra, and Dragon Quest, just to name a few. Times were changing at a very rapid pace, so much so that realistically, I don't think anyone could have predicted it to the degree that it happened. Games evolved from much more simplistic yet fun time sinks to more elaborate and colorful experiences, some of which many would still argue are among the top dogs of the industry. One of these many franchises was the Mega Man series. In my previous video, I went into details on Capcom's history with arcade machines and how Mega Man was their attempt at hopping onto the NES's success by making a console exclusive unlike any of their previous games. Besides ports from some arcade games, Capcom was trying to shift its focus in developing new IPs for this newer hardware. I feel this is further proven when you look at their 90s lineup of games, many of which were made for consoles, and very select few were made for arcades, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Mega Man was a rough first attempt at something new and original, but they had something there. From what I could find online, the original Mega Man sold about 31,900 copies lifetime in Japan. Meanwhile, overseas, it really didn't give me any solid numbers, besides people just saying that, well, in quotations, it didn't sell very well first. Normally, that wouldn't bode well for a game series, and although in the last 20 or so years, some would look at the games rather fondly, you can't argue that at the time, Capcom might as well have invested their resources in something they felt a little more comfortable with. It just wasn't successful enough. Akira Kitamura, the creator of Mega Man, couldn't let his ambitions go to rest, however, as he spoke to the higher-ups at Capcom to try and greenlight a sequel, despite Mega Man's somewhat poor reception. After some convincing, Capcom would allow Mega Man 2's development only if the staff who would work on it did so on their off time and still worked on other, more important tasks. A small 6-person group, led by Akira Kitamura and Keiji Inafune, then began development on Mega Man 2 and had the game ready in about 3 to 4 months' time, this being one of the more famous examples of development crunch in the industry. All things considered, despite the very long nights and short deadline, they were able to make it, and to this day it's looked upon as one of the best NES games in the library. That said, I've never experienced most of the classic Mega Man games, much less actually be in any of them, until I began my Mega Man journey with the Mega Man 1 video. Does it hold up in modern time? Is it something that I just had to be there to understand? Who knows? Though, through many conversations with my friends, they've praised Mega Man 2, so I'm looking forward to see whether or not I actually enjoy it, or if at the end of the day I just think it's overrated. I've already wasted enough of your time with my senseless chattering, so it's time for us to check out Mega Man 2. Okay, so I know I said I was going to stop this senseless chatter, but I just had to talk about this before anything else really. I refused to talk about this during the Mega Man 1 video because I didn't think that there was much of a point behind it, but in hindsight, I probably should have. The box art. I mean, just fucking look at it. The Japanese box art for both Mega Man 1 and 2 were made by Inafune, distinguished by their character design, using a more cartoony/anime appearance, and composition placing Mega Man as a centerpiece surrounded by the antagonist Robot Masters. They honestly are very charming to say the least. The European box art, on the other hand, is very interesting to me since the European box art for the first game is something that I personally think is very badass and has a certain charm behind it, but I'm not gonna lie, Part 2's European art is kind of ass, and it feels like someone sprayed our boy over here with that chrome paint from that one SpongeBob episode where Squidward goes into the future. Then we get to the godforsaken Abomination that is a US art box, and I swear to God, we Americans can't really beat the "be American, me like gun" allegations, can we? This art is absolute dog shit, and it's no wonder that no one in the US wanted to play the game. They butchered our boy and gave him many dysmorphic features. Don't even get me started on that fucking gun. Just stare at it long enough and you'll see what I mean with it. On the bright side, the American Mega Man 2 art is leagues better than the first one. It's still dog shit in the grand scheme of things, what with Mega Man 2 using a gun that looks straight out of a sci-fi film, and Mega Man having a visor on his helmet for some reason. I don't understand. Also, Dr. Light, for some reason, is hiding behind Crush Man, which confuses me because he's a villain. Anyway, as soon as you boot up the game, it's clear as day the presentation went up to an 11. Unlike the first game, where from the title screen you go straight into the stage select, here you get an opening sequence that basically says, after the events of Mega Man 1, Dr. Wily is back now with 8 robot masters of his own creation, and it's Mega Man's job to put a stop to them. Afterwards, the camera pans upwards a skyscraper while a new version of the Mega Man 1 ending theme plays in the background, symbolically letting you know that the first chapter is officially over and a new adventure is right around the corner and about to begin, as the theme eases its way into a newer one that many Mega Man fans and gamers alike might recognize. Not gonna lie, as far as game intros from the era go, this one's actually really fucking good. It gives you a sense of importance and urgency. Mega Man's on the lookout, hair flowing in the wind, readying himself for the fight to come whatever may. And holy crap, what a fight it is. Like Mega Man 1, Mega Man 2 has 2 main takeaways once you start the game. 1, this game has a password system. Most games in this era didn't have ways for you to save your progress. The average game didn't come equipped with save batteries to allow this. In many cases, you had to start up a game and you would start from scratch. Exceptions to these were usually JRPGs such as Dragon Quest, Fire Emblem, and Final Fantasy, just to name a few. And 2, there's now 8 robot masters versus the 6 from the original game. So clearly there is more for you to play. That's where the passwords come into play. Every time you beat a level, the game will give you the choice of seeing a password that would help you keep your progress by inputting the same password on the password screen upon starting the game, or you could just go to the stage select and continue on with your adventure. Although in more recent iterations of Mega Man 2, such as the Mega Man Legacy Collection, the password system is obsolete. It's nice to know that, at least back in the day, players did have a workaround to saves that provided a certain level of convenience. The game controls pretty much the same as it did in Mega Man 1. The only main difference that I could personally find was that Mega Man is much more responsive in this game in movement versus the original. Mega Man 1, upon moving left or right on the D-pad, there was a delay and a certain slippery feeling. Mega Man 2 fixes this by making our boy move as soon as you press a button and has him stop just as fast. For a platformer, the tighter the feel of a character's movement, the better in my opinion. Honestly, it just makes some stages leagues better than what we got with the first game. Speaking of stages, as I mentioned earlier with the intro sequence, the presentation of the game was drastically updated, and this translated over to the stages as well. The backgrounds are much more detailed and lively than they ever were before, and the stage design is a lot more varied as well. From the lush green trees in Woodman's stage to the sea of clouds of Airman's stage and the underwater region of Bowman's stage, Mega Man 2's stage variety just blows the first game out of the water, pun not intended. As per usual with Mega Man games, once you defeat a stage's boss, you're gifted their abilities as power-ups, and you can use these throughout the game. Pretty standard stuff. Although I'd like to point out that obtaining these power-ups has its own animated sequence, so that's a nice touch. Abilities in this game are probably some of the most unbalanced in the franchise I have ever seen so far. Metal Blades have hardly any ammo consumption, and with the ability to fire in 8 different directions, practically destroying enemies, and being the weakness at near half of the bosses being the worst offender, as well as the Leaf Shield lasting pretty much infinitely as long as you don't move, making health and 1-up grinding an easy task. I would love to chalk up the lack of balancing to the tight dev schedule, but I'm curious to see how all the weapons would have performed if given more time in the oven. A key thing to note about this is that at the very least, multiple power-ups in this game are useful. Something that I really can't say about the first Mega Man game, as I found myself screwing around with the skills to see how to best tackle certain enemies, and honestly I feel like that's how it should be. Something that's absolutely new to Mega Man's arsenal is the inclusions of items 1, 2, and 3, whereas in Mega Man 1 you have the Magnet Beam to help with platforming. Items 1 through 3 kind of do the same thing, but in a different way. 1 spawns a floating platform that goes up slightly, giving you essentially another jump. 2 is a rocket that goes in a horizontal trajectory, helping you reach far out areas. And 3 is a platform that crawls up walls, essentially making itself an elevator of sorts. The last new addition was the introduction of E-Tanks. E-Tanks serving as this game's HP recovery item. Under normal circumstances, you'd need an enemy drop to heal HP, but E-tanks make it easier and more convenient. They'll heal your HP completely, and you can carry up to 4 of these at any given time. As far as I know, the only way for you to get these is to find them in hidden areas or hard to reach platforms throughout different stages. These are an absolute game changer, as I can see how there could be occasions where players might be a little tight on health, especially during boss fights if you don't know the enemy's weakness. While writing the script for this video, I came to realize that I wasn't able to talk about the music as I couldn't find any interesting way to segue into it, but honestly, screw it, here I go. Mega Man 2 soundtrack is fucking phenomenal. I really enjoyed Mega Man 1's OST, but 2 has a lot more going for it in the music department. From the first game, I only ever really liked Cutman Sage's theme and maybe Wily 1's theme if I was pushing it. But Mega Man 2 has so many more tracks that appeal to me, the contrast is night and day. Of course, there's the iconic start screen song that became a series staple, featured as the main theme for Mega Man and Smash Bros. Upon him being added to the roster. There's also Quickman and Heatman's themes that kind of had me bobbing my head as I played. However, no 2 songs had me as excited as Metal Man's theme, and of course, Wily Castle 1. These 2 have been longtime favorites of mine since long before I even considered playing these games for the channel. So much so, I'd be doing a disjustice to these songs if I didn't give you at least a small taste of the original versions, along with my favorite more modern official takes of these 2 songs. Please take a listen. That version of Wily 1's Castle from the 20th anniversary Techno Disc is honestly just a wonder to me, and it has absolutely no fucking reason to be this good. But anyway, once you defeat all 8 Robot Masters, it's time to take the fight to Wily at his castle. Look at this smug asshole trying to seduce me.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Wily's castle, like the first game, is divided into multiple sections, all of which share your weapon energy, so you have to be very careful and use your resources accordingly. Unlike the first game, however, I actually enjoy Wily's castle stages here, as they have some really fun and interesting platforming sections. To me, the standout design choice is the utility of items 1 through 3. In Mega Man 1, you needed the Magna Beam to progress through Wily's first stage. The issue of this is that the Magna Beam is a missable collectible, and there's absolutely nothing that hints at its necessity to beat the game. In Mega Man 2, however, items 1 through 3 are given to you as you beat different Robot Masters, ensuring that you have all the abilities you need. This small change honestly is all I've ever wanted, and I'm glad it was something that they decided on. One major gripe I do have with Wily's castle is in one of the stages where at the end, you have to destroy these wall-mounted machines that are blocked by walls that are practically indestructible unless you have the Crash Bomber, which is Crashman's power. The way that this fight is meant to be played is that players have to find a path to destroy all the machines without overusing Crash Bomber, as the ammo isn't enough to destroy all the enemies and obstacles. Inherently, this wouldn't be an issue, except it becomes one when these enemies are immune to any other weapons. So any first-time players are going into this and likely wasting their time and ammo destroying obstacles, and then noticing that they can't do jack shit after a certain point, so what are they gonna do? They'll just fucking die. I don't know, it just feels very cheap to me, as it punishes the player, especially newer ones, for what I can only call unfair design. Worst part about it is that I can't consider this something that was planned, considering the walls that you're able to blow up don't respawn after you die, which would allude to the fact that looking for the optimal route wasn't exactly what they had in mind when they made this level, but I digress. After beating all of Wily's stages and 4 seizure warnings later, you finally get to rematch all the robot masters. You make quick work of them, as now you have all your abilities, and head straight for old man Wily. Wily isn't anything to write home about, in all honesty. You just hit the cockpit of his machine, he runs away like a little bitch, and you chase him into Wily stage 6. But here's something interesting, Wily now transforms into an alien. This fight is an interesting one. The alien is a unique boss where every weapon actually heals the boss's HP, with one weakness though, that being Bubble Man's Bubble Lead. Oh, but wait a minute, Reach, didn't you just complain a few moments ago about Crash Bomber and the wall-mounted machines? You were literally just whining about how newer players were very likely to burn through all their ammo and forced to die. Ah, but don't get your panties in a twist, astute viewer, for you are 100% correct. So then, what makes Alien any different? To me, the difference lies in the ammo consumption and the context clues. Any observant player would notice that Mega Man's arm cannon does not deal any damage, so they'll think to themselves, huh, that's weird, maybe let me try any other weapons. That's perfectly fine. So they go down the list and eventually notice that the only weapon that deals damage is Bubble Lead, right? Now the difference here is that Bubble Lead lasts a lot longer than Crash Bomber. Can you run out of ammo and put yourself in a situation where you have no other choice but to die? Yeah, you can. You absolutely can. But considering the amount of damage the weapon deals versus the ammo consumption, you have more than enough ammo to miss a few shots and still be able to win the fight. Whereas Crash Bomber's ammo is clearly not enough for players to learn how to deal with the fight, and it punishes you for learning or experimenting. Here, you at least have enough leeway to screw up and make a comeback. To me, that genuinely makes a huge ass difference. Tangent aside, once Alien is defeated, you come to realize that Alien was in fact a hologram made by the real Dr. Wily. Wily notices how screwed he is and quickly gets on his knees and begs for forgiveness, as he usually does. The day is saved, Mega Man returns home, and you get an ending sequence that starts rolling. Mega Man walks on with what looks like a small town in the background going through the 4 seasons, symbolizing the passage of time, all before Mega Man takes off his helmet and leaves it alone in an empty field's hilltop. This, I can only assume, meaning Mega Man's journey was meant to end here. And considering that Mega Man 2 was a struggle to get greenlit, the devs probably thought it would be the end of the road for the series, so they wanted to give him a nice send-off, not knowing that this passion project of theirs would end up being the Blue Bomber's saving grace, and the main reason that the series is as beloved as it is nowadays. So, what are my thoughts on Mega Man 2? Does it hold up? Would I recommend it? Well, Crash Bomber shenanigans aside, I did give the game props on pretty much all fronts. The increase in presentation, tighter controls, better power-ups, and high-quality soundtracks should make this an open and shut case, should it not? Well, it's not that simple, at least for me. See, Mega Man 2 sets the stage for future entries in the franchise. It gave the IP life and tells you that pretty much this is how it's gonna be, and from that perspective, it's great. It improves on many issues that the first game had, but it also demonstrated some issues of its own. It might sound like I'm being too picky with the game, especially considering how the development of the game went and how tight and difficult things were for the devs, but I can't in good faith not criticize aspects like the lack of weapon balancing and some choices that they made, like the Crash Bomber part, or even the ridiculousness that is the teleporting platforms in Heatman's stage that I failed to mention earlier because honestly, well, fuck those platforms. I didn't like them in Mega Man 1, and I sure as hell don't like them here. The game's difficulty is also something that I refuse to talk about up until now. So, in the process of writing the script and making this video, I've played through Mega Man's 3 through 5, videos on those relatively soonish. And maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but Mega Man 2 is the only game out of the bunch that I recall having two difficulties. Hard mode is essentially the original game as it was in Japan, with damage values back to normal, making it easier for you to die. However, I did a hard mode run, and I'm not sure if maybe it was a recency of my normal run still being fresh in my mind at the time, but I didn't feel the same challenge I felt when I played Mega Man 1 or hell, 3 through 5. That said, Mega Man 2 is an amazing game overall. It makes sense why many people love it as much as they do, despite me believing that the status of the game in the community is kind of overrated. Saying this, I don't want people to misunderstand me and say,
Oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about. This is the best NES game ever. I've played it 50 times and never had a problem with it.
and trust me, I really do get it, right? I really do enjoy the overall experience, and I'm glad this is the game that popularized Mega Man as a franchise. I absolutely have no qualms towards recommending this to anyone, really. It's just that I have to keep in mind that as someone who didn't grow up with these games, there's definitely a difference in perspective and a disconnect with most people who've been playing this for 30 or so years. My critiques aren't here to try to invalidate your opinion on the game or even belittle the huge impact the game had for the series. I know some folk like to misconstrue the term overrated, but an overrated product can still be a pretty damn good product. But hey, maybe you have a different take. Maybe you really hate the game, or hell, maybe you think it's the best thing since sliced bread. Honestly, I'd love to hear your opinions on the game and maybe some story of how you got into the Mega Man series. How did Mega Man 2 play a part in that, if at all? Anyway, I do appreciate everything, guys. I know I took a while to make this video. As I mentioned earlier, I already finished playing parts 3 through 5. I couldn't give you an estimate as to when those will be done, but know that I'm already working on it. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel so you won't lose any updates on any future uploads. Also follow me on Twitch, I'm a little more active there. Also have a few projects that I've been working on since after the first Mega Man video from last year. I just haven't published them because honestly, they're not to a degree that I deem a type of quality that I want, and I don't mind reworking them and going through it again in hopes to actually make something I'm proud of and be able to share with you guys. All I ask is just for some patience. That said, I do appreciate if you've been able to stick by me for as long as you have, and I hope I see you in the next one.